Okay, so let's just look at something very simple here. It's pretty common in lots of UI technologies to want to set up styles for particular user interface elements. So if we have a look at our page.xaml here, it's just a blank file at the moment. Let's just scale that down. I can put onto this grid, some kind of button, and I can set the text of the button. Let's put something in there. Let's say click me. I can set the font size for that text or something like that. Let's set it to 36. I can set the margin, let's say to 20. And the designer will pop up and it will show me that I've created a button there on the form. We can go and explicitly set these things like font size and margins and so on, but it's pretty common that you'd want to have a whole set of user interface elements look the same and apply some kind of style to those things such that you can put the style information in one place and not have to set all these explicit properties on every single element that you ever define. So what you can do is define a style for something like the button here, and typically what you do is put that into a set of resources. Now, resource resolution in Silverlight is kind of hierarchical in that we could go and put some resources here on this user control, so that would then be part of this control. So we can say user control.resources, and into that we can go and put a style. And the way in which you use resources is you give them a key. Let's call this my style. And then what styles are is very simple, really. They just are setters of properties. So we have a setter. The property is going to be, let's say, font size, and the value is going to be, well, let's go ahead and say 36. Now we need to say what kind of thing this style actually applies to. So what we're going to say here is a target type. In our case, is going to be button, because we're targeting buttons with this thing. So let's just go and scroll down here, and instead of setting the font size, in fact, let's go up and set the margin as well as part of this style. So let's go and get the setter here, and let's say margin equals 10 or something like that. And we'll pop down to our button now, and instead of setting the margin and the font size locally here, what we'll do is we'll set the style. And we use resource lookup to find that thing, so we're looking for a static resource, which was called my style. And we should be able to go and reload the designer. Seems to have gone a bit upset up there while we were typing. But in the meantime, it is back and using that style. So we could say if we change the margin up here to be 50, the designer reflects that we've done that. And obviously this will happen at runtime as well. Let's put it back to 10. So we're setting simple properties here, and then we can define any number of buttons or whatever they might be, whatever UI elements you want to style. We can define any number of the ones that use the same style and put our style information into one place, encapsulating this data in one place to avoid duplication of it and cluttering the XAML with it. Now, this would really be more about resources and styles, but if you wanted to move your resources from this particular user control or page, what we could do is snip them out of there, pop over to app.xaml over here, and go ahead and put them in here as resources instead. So now we've got them in the applications resources, spanning wider than just that particular page. If we save that and pop back to the app.xaml, to the page.xaml, we're still using that set of styles. So if we pop back over here and we were to change that margin once again to be 50, let's pop back to the page. We can see that the new margin's been applied, and we can see if we save it again that the new margin's gone back. So we can put these globally if you like and use them across pages that way, across controls that way. Now another thing that's worth thinking about is that we can't just set simple values here. So we've got a property, let's pick a property like property equals background or something like that. And we can put a value into here for the value of the setter, and we could use something like a linear gradient brush or something like that, which is more of a complex object, and we can have some gradient stops in there. So we'll just say linear gradient brush dot gradient stops, and into there we'll have a gradient stop. Let's say the offset is 0 and the color is red. This is going to look quite ugly. And let's have another one that says the offset is 1 and and the color is blue or something like that. So pretty ugly, but we've gone ahead and changed a more complicated property with a more complicated object, but the fact is it serializes to XAML, and so if we pop back over to see our button, we can see it's picked up that new style. So don't get the idea that you can only set simple values. You can set more complicated values in there, in fact some very complicated values. Now, one other thing to think about here is sometimes wanting to style things more generically than just using button. So, for instance, if we go back to our page.xaml over here, we have a button at the moment. Let's take another control. Let's use button.tooltip, and into that tooltip let's put a tooltip, and in there let's just have content equals click this button. And so we're now going to have a tooltip at runtime on our button. If we press F5, we should be able to see that we spin this thing up, and when we hover over that button, we're going to see that tooltip displayed. Let's just wait 1 second for IE to spin up with the debugger. Okay, so we get our button on the screen, and when we hover over that thing, let's just get the button, there's our tooltip saying click this button. However, the tooltip isn't being styled really much like the button, and we might want to style it. Now we could do that. We could go and build a style that applies to all tooltips, but actually there's commonality between button and tooltip in that they are both content controls. They both have arbitrary content, and they both have properties like margins and font sizes and so on and so forth. And if we pop back to our style, we can't actually take this and apply it to that tooltip because the tooltip is not a button. However, both buttons and tooltips are content controls. So we should be able to pop back to our XAML for the tooltip now and tell it to use the exact same style. In fact, I'm just going to copy that piece of XAML there, press that into there, and then if we go and rerun, we should see that we've now applied that style not only to a button but also to the tooltip, because they both share common derivation, and so we should be able to style them with one simple style. Let's just go and see if that button will pop back up for us. And when we hover over it now, we can see that we've got a particularly ugly tooltip that we've now created. But you see that we are styling it the same way as we're styling the button, by reusing the fact, or using the fact really, that they share common ancestry, so we can just style them both that way.